I'm Parveen Yaqoob, Deputy Vice-Chancellor at the University of Reading. I'd like to pay tribute to Edith Morley, a literary scholar and activist who worked at the University of Reading from 1908 to 1940 and was the first female professor in a British university. When I read her memoirs recently, I was quite surprised to find that I had something in common with Edith. She grew up in Victorian London at a time when there were significant restrictions on what young women could do. Her parents actively discouraged any form of education beyond school, and they didn't like the idea of her working for a living. I grew up in London 100 years later, and similarly, my parents actively discouraged education for girls, and there were cultural restrictions on what I could and couldn't do. When I read her memoirs, which she wrote in 1944, there was a passage that really resonated with me. It says this: "We hear a great deal nowadays of women's earlier struggle against their opponents for their rights and their freedom. Less is said concerning the more painful and pain-giving necessity of contention with parents, brothers and friends about the countless little things which in their sum created a mountain of difficulty and repression." Edith fought hard against repression. In 1907, the Reading University College, as it was then known, set about on a quest to achieve full university status. And as part of that, all of the heads of departments were promoted to professor, except for Edith. She had a long and bitter struggle to achieve that title, which she finally did in 1912. And you might ask, why was the university so worried about doing that? Well, it was concerned because as a young and struggling institution, yet to make its reputation, it was worried about being the first to promote a woman to that title. But I'm really glad that it did, and gradually other women followed. It took more than 100 years from that point for me to become the first female Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the university. There might be 100 years between us, but Edith Morley is definitely a role model for me.